Welcome back. The Coalition for the Homeless is the nation's oldest and direct service organization helping individuals and families experiencing homelessness. As we brace for cold weather and the upcoming holiday season, the organization is making efforts to help members of this community. One of those efforts is their 2022 Holiday Toy Drive. Joining me now to discuss is Maria Aguilar, Outreach Coordinator for the Coalition for the Homeless, and Jacquelyn Simone, Policy Director for Coalition for the Homeless. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Jacquelyn, can you just talk about your organization as a whole and the work that you do?
Sure. So Coalition for the Homeless has been around since 1981. We recently celebrated our 40th anniversary, but it was a bittersweet celebration because even though we're very proud of our work over the past 4 decades, we also recognize that homelessness is a continual crisis in New York City, and that currently we have the largest number of homeless people in New York City since the Great Depression. So how we work as an organization is we have 11 direct service programs that meet people's immediate needs. We have programs for youth, which is what Maria does. We have a mobile soup kitchen that serves about 1,000 meals every single night of the year to homeless and hungry New Yorkers on the streets. We have a crisis program. We have eviction prevention. We have permanent housing programs. And then my job as policy director is to take the lessons that we learn from serving about 3,500 homeless and low-income New Yorkers every day through our programs, and then to look for large-scale systemic solutions that can actually end homelessness and put the coalition out of business.
Now, I quickly want to just touch on some of those youth programs. So, Maria, can you briefly just tell us a little bit about the work you do with the youth? Because I think that's a really important population in this community that sometimes often gets overlooked.
Yeah, so youth services is a quite big group, like Jackie said. And youth services focus especially for the children. And we have a summer camp we run during the summer. And then we also have a Bound for Success, which is an after-school program that's offered in facilities. So we are lucky enough to pick kids from the school and bring them into the facility and help them with homework and school projects. Then we also have the back to school project that we give book bags to facilities, and also because some parents can't afford to buy school supplies. So we get to do that. And then we also have the toy drive, which is a busy season for us now, because we try to collect as many toys as we can possibly. And so that's
I was just going to pause you right there, because before we talk a little bit more about the toy drive, because of the season that we're in, I want to focus on the homeless population and some of the challenges that they're facing now that we're in the winter time and it's getting colder. So can you just talk a little bit more about those challenges? What are some of the things people who experience homelessness are facing during these colder months?
Yeah, so I can start. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's okay, Jackie. You can go.
Okay. So homelessness is a crisis year-round, but especially as the weather gets colder, there are additional risks to people, especially those who are unsheltered. So we have a right to shelter in New York City, which means that the vast majority of people who are homeless in New York City are actually sleeping in shelters, not on the streets. And in the main shelter system, there are more than 60,000 people, including 19,000 children, sleeping in those facilities on any given night, plus thousands of additional people in other municipal shelter systems. And then on top of that, we have thousands of people who are sleeping on the subways and on the streets because they didn't find the shelter system to be safe or appropriate to meet their needs. So especially as the weather gets colder, those people are at heightened risk of hypothermia and other health risks due to extreme weather, as well as the emotional toll that I think happens during the holidays. So the holidays for so many of us are a time to gather with family and friends and to be at home with our loved ones. And for people who are homeless, it can be very emotionally draining if they don't have a home to go to and if they might have tense relationships with their extended family or friends. So I think that this toy drive is one small way that we are trying to make the holidays a little bit brighter for homeless children.
Now, in regard to homelessness, people often forget that there are so many children who are affected by it. Now, according to your website, nearly 19,000 kids will spend this holiday season homeless, staying in the shelter system. Can you tell me a little bit more about that finding?
Yes, so that number only refers to children who are sleeping in Department of Homeless Services shelters, which is the main municipal agency that runs the shelter system, as well as a smaller shelter system under the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. That number doesn't even include children who are in specialized shelters for survivors of domestic violence or runaway and homeless youth, or families that are sleeping in private or faith-based shelters. That's just looking at one segment of the shelter population. And I think that it's really heartbreaking to see that in recent months, we have been we've been seeing an increase every single month in the number of children in shelters. Some of that is because things like the eviction moratorium expired. So more people are becoming homeless and facing eviction, but also we have seen an increase in the number of new arrivals to the city from the southern border. And that means that many people who are new immigrants are left with no other option but to stay in the shelter system because of the lack of affordable housing here. So this is clearly a crisis situation, and we're just doing our part to try to help.
Now, Maria, I'd like to hear from you. Can you just talk about, your experience working with children who are experiencing homelessness? What is that like? And, what are some of the things that you hear? Because I don't think a lot of people tend to focus on that population.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get off topic, but myself, I grew up in a facility for a few years, so I know what the kids and parents feel, because it's not easy going through living in a facility. It drains you emotionally, it drains you mentally, and it's hard. So I feel like we need to put our focus on homelessness, especially on youth, because those are the kids that are going to grow up and are going to develop how we see the community. So I feel like it's very, we just need to focus on the youth services. And this is why we also we offer a lot of programs to help homelessness.
Now, one of the things that you're doing, as you mentioned, is the toy drive. Can you tell us a little bit more about the toy drive? Like, is this an annual thing? Let everybody know about this toy drive.
So the toy drive, we do it every year. We do create an Amazon wish list so everyone can donate. It's very easy to access. We do have the link with us. And we have different toys from babies to the teenagers, because we tend to forget about the teenagers, but we don't. So we try to gather as many toys as from different ages, the genders as well. And it's very easy.
Now, how can people help support your toy drive, and how long will you be collecting items?
So our toy drive started the week of Thanksgiving, and we're going to try to finish and maybe Jackie can help me with this one too. We started the week of Thanksgiving and finish the week of before Christmas. So we try to gather as many toys and send them out to the facility.
Yeah, I think our wish list actually went live at the start of November. And we are hoping to have as many toys as possible by December 16th so that we have plenty of time to wrap and deliver the toys to children in shelters throughout the city before the holidays.
Now, I understand that this could also benefit those who volunteer regarding taxes. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that, or explain that to people who may not know anything about that?
So we don't necessarily use volunteers for the toy drive. So it's all the toys that are purchased are pre-taxed.
Right. So people could, if you purchase a toy through the Amazon wish list or make a financial contribution, then that is tax deductible. But as Maria said, this year, because of the ongoing pandemic and space constraints, we are not soliciting large numbers of volunteers to help us this year.
Okay, and that's something I wanted to talk about a little bit more. Can you just explain, for a lot of people, COVID seems to be going away, or, like people are treating it a little bit differently. But I understand due to this, the population that you work with, it still can be very much a risk. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we have seen that homeless New Yorkers were at disproportionate risk of contracting the virus that causes COVID-19, especially because for single adults, many of them live in congregate shelters, meaning there might be a dorm shared with a dozen other people. For families, even though they have their own room, the nature of being in a crowded shelter is still a risk. And we, of course, know that Black and Latinx New Yorkers have been disproportionately affected by this virus. And many people who are homeless also have health risks, even before the pandemic, because we know that without stable housing, people find it very challenging to maintain their health. So we are always erring on the side of caution and making sure that we are not contributing to the spread of this ongoing virus through our efforts. But what we found, even in 2020, we were still doing the toy drive, and we found that people were really generous and willing to contribute through the Amazon wish list and by making financial donations. And that has enabled us to continue this toy drive even throughout the pandemic.
I want to thank you both so much for joining us and talking about this. And I really hope people do, get into that holiday spirit and find it within themselves to donate. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Now, if you would like to help support their toy drive, please go to www.coalitionforthehomeless.org, or you can follow them on Twitter at any of their social medias. We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.